Erev Tov L'Chulam, good evening and welcome. I am Rabbi Josh Birkenwald of Congregation Sinai in San Jose. Thank you for joining us to remember the Holocaust and to honor those who survived. Although we are unable to gather in person this year, we are blessed. First of all, we have technological tools that enable us to gather online. And second, our Jewish community's commitment to Klal Yisrael, the unity of the Jewish people, makes tonight's memorial service possible. It has been a true collaborative effort. We will hear testimony from Holocaust survivor Dr. Anna Halberstam Rubin and from Sophie Weinzimmer, who was born in a displaced persons camp shortly after the war. We will also hear personal reflections written and delivered by students from Hillel and Yavne Day School. Rabbis, cantors, professional and volunteer leaders, and representatives from our Jewish community will lead us in prayer and commemoration. I want to especially encourage parents to include their children in tonight's observance. It's so important for young people to participate in events of memory and commemoration. We invite you to light a memorial candle with us towards the end of the service. To begin, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Chaya Rubin, who will interview her mother, Professor Anna Halberstam Rubin.
Hi, my name is Chaya Rubin, and I want to thank Rabbi Birkenwald and all of you for the opportunity to introduce my mother to speak to you a little bit today. Dr. Anna Halberstam Rubin was born in Poland in 1925, and she was raised in a town in Slovakia, Vranov nad Toplu, which was part of what was then called the First Czechoslovak Republic. She was the eldest of 5 children. Her father, Rabbi Cheskel Straka, or Edward Halberstam, was the Hasidic rabbi of her town. She's going to talk to you a little bit about her experiences. I'll ask her a few questions, which she'll answer. And just to let you know what happened to her after the Holocaust, she immigrated to the U.S. in 1946 together with her grandfather. And after completing high school in New York, she married my father, Israel Rubin, in 1951. After raising 3 children, she completed college and graduate school and received a PhD in Russian history from Kent State University in 1982. And her first book, Shalom Aleichem, the author, a social historian, describes how from that great Yiddish writer's work we're able to understand how conditions in the Jewish-Russian Pale of Settlement led to the rise of socialism, communism, and Zionism. My mom has recently written a memoir about her Holocaust experiences called Just a Little Girl, Despair and Deliverance. So you can read more about her there if you like. It's available both on Kindle and in print through Amazon. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mom, and I'll be the disembodied voice asking questions. And thank you again for including her in this observance. So Mom, can you tell our audience a little bit about the character of the town, the Jewish character of the town where you were raised?
So it was a small community which had actually 3 branches. We belonged to a Orthodox minyan, the Cloys it was called. There was also a conservative branch and a reform branch that the Jewish community had. The reform people had a temple, the conservative had a little shul, but the main synagogue was an Orthodox synagogue, and it was actually a beautiful building that was built by a very prominent European architect who was especially invited to build the shul in Vranov. It was one of his signature buildings that he was very proud of, and we were all very proud of our shul.
So, can you tell us a little bit about when your bad experiences during the Shoah began?
Well, in 1940, the Czechoslovakia, actually in 1949, in September of 1949,
1939.
1939 is when I meant to say, I'm sorry, was the Czechoslovak Republic was disrupted, and the Slovaks, who were unfortunately allies of the Germans, their Nazi party actually created a fascist state. And all of the Nuremberg laws that prevailed in Germany were actually introduced in Slovakia. Accordingly, by 1942, the Jewish community where we lived was deported to Poland. Most of them died. Very few of them returned. I was one of the fortunate ones who survived.
So, how did it begin for you and your family?
Well,
How did it begin for you and your family? When did things start to go bad?
so in March of 1942, between 1940 and 1942, it was kind of, we had to wear a yellow star. There were all kinds of restriction on Jewish families and Jewish community. Jewish stores were Aryanized, that is, they were had to be given over to Gentile people. Jews had to wear yellow stars. There were other restrictions on the Jewish community and Jewish life. And by 1942, the full-fledged Nuremberg laws that the Germans had in Germany were actually present also in Slovakia. By May of 1942, between March and May, the young people, thousands of young Jewish boys and girls were transported to Poland, and it was actually the Jewish boys and girls that created Auschwitz and some of the other camps where the Jews were subsequently herded into.
So, how did things begin for you?
By 1942, one day in March of 1942, my mother woke me up one morning and said to me, "You have to leave the house," because that was the time when they collected young Jewish people, 16 and older, both boys and girls, and about um, transports of per thousands of each young Jewish men and women were transported to Poland. So my parents grabbed me and sent me away from home. I went to a nearby community called Bardio, where I had relatives and I was hiding out there. Subsequently, I came to Stropkov, where my grandparents lived, and I was hiding out first with them and then subsequently by myself in various different places all throughout the war. I was running from one place to another, from Slovakia to Hungary, from Hungary back to Slovakia, back again to Hungary, and so on, until the war was over. I was fortunately on many a day I had to go into hiding, sometimes simply behind the door. I didn't even know who lived in that building, and it was just simply mere luck. I felt many a day that someone was leading me, that I was meant to survive, that it wasn't me who succeeded in remaining alive. It was, I was being led.
Can you tell us a little about the people whom you lost? Because this is an observance of Yom HaShoah in which we commemorate the people that we've lost. Can you tell us about your family a little bit?
Okay, so first it was my father, Rabbi Yecheskel Schrager Halberstam, who was the the rabbi of the community, of the Orthodox Jewish community, the Hasidic Orthodox Jewish community. There was another Hasidic community in Vrano, but my father had a special minyan with a branch of people called the Hasidim, who he was their rabbi, and
So your father, and who else? Who else did you lose during the show?
my father, my mother, who was the daughter of a rabbi from Poland, my grandfather on my mother's side, Rabbi Naftali Rubin, and we had 5 children. I was the oldest of 5, so I had 3 brothers and a sister. All of them perished. All of them were killed.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your mother and your siblings?
She was a wonderful individual. She was sort of a role model for many Jewish women. I remember her mostly with her sitter in her hands because she, no matter how busy she was with children, with a household, she always made time to daven every day to say the tefillos. And also not only the morning prayers, but also the evening prayer, the mincha service especially. There was not a day that my mother didn't daven mincha. So she was a big tznua, a big tzedekis. Nothing.
A modest woman and a righteous woman.
Very modest and very righteous woman, yes.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd like to share about her?
She was also a wonderful balabosta. I had cousins, and they said that somebody asked us children who we like best, where we like to go. So I had an aunt, Tante Ruchche. So they said, Tante Ruchche we like because she tells us always stories about Beis Yaakov and so on. But to eat and to be in the house, we like to be by Aunt Chaya Surche because she's a big, big balabust and always has something very good to eat and to nash. So this was the response of the children.
How about your siblings? Can you tell us a little bit about each of them?
Okay, so I had 4 siblings. I had 3 brothers and a sister. So the oldest of the 3 brothers was Chaim. This was he was named after a famous member of our Halberstam family, Rav Chaim Halberstam, the Sanzer Rebbe. And Chaim was a doer. If you needed anything done, whether it was us or the neighbors or whoever, they know that Chaim could take care of it. Chaim was everybody's shikling, sort of. You could rely on him, no matter how difficult the task, to go to whatever needed to be done. Chaim took care of it.
How old was he when he died?
Chaim was, during the war, he was a year younger than me, so he was 15. I was 16 and he was 15.
In 1942.
In 1942, right.
And who was next?
Next was my brother Shmuel. He was a very studious young man. He was a big Yiras Shamayim. He was always.
Can you translate that for us in case there are people who don't speak Yiddish or Hebrew?
A very God-fearing individual. He was always with a sefer or with a siddur, always having something to study or to pray. And he was very studious and very gifted. So he was going to be the Talmid Chochem of my siblings. Chaim was a doer. He took care of everything for us and for everybody else. But Shmuel was a Yiras Shamayim. He was sitting and he was learning and praying.
Mm-hmm. He was the scholar.
A scholar.
And who was next? Was it your sister?
Next was my sister Tzipora. She was a young girl of 12. And she told me that when she came to school, we went to public school. The first Czechoslovak Republic had a very democratic system, and the public school was very well staffed by very well qualified and capable teachers. And the compliment that she got was that she was going to be like her sister. She was going to be a very good student. Yeah, dedicated to her studies.
And tell us a little bit. And I remember you once told me that she was very mature for her years too.
Right, she was. She was telling me, she was pointing out some of the things that I should have been doing, which I didn't do. Right.
And then how about your littlest, the littlest one in the family?
The littlest one in the family was my brother David. He was a very sweet child, extremely gifted and very, very bright. He was only about, what was he, about 10 years old in 1942. And he was growing to be a great person. Unfortunately, he didn't have a chance to mature.
And can you tell us a little bit about if there's something that you wanted to say to future generations, to children about the Holocaust and what we should learn from it? What would you say?
The most important lesson I would tell them is that it is extremely important to judge people on the merit of their behavior rather than by who they are, whose belly they were born into. I mean, their race, their religion. People should be judged by their deeds and by their character rather than by how they were born and who they are.
Mm-hmm. So we shouldn't generalize about
We
people
shouldn't
based
penalize
on
people.
a group or what group they belong to.
What group they belong to, that's
Mm-hmm.
right.
And I know that in the past you've also told me about how your family applied for visas to the United States in 1937,
Yes,
and they did not
right.
receive them, and that has led you to tell me sometimes about the importance of granting asylum to refugees. What
That's
would you like to
right.
say to people about that?
Right. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get into the United States. My parents applied sometime between 1937 and 1938. It was a long process. All the documents were procured. We needed this document and that document. Everything was assembled and everything was sent to the United States consulate. In the end, we were not able to obtain the visas and we were not admitted, and they all died. I was fortunate in 1945, after the war was over, my grandfather and I, who were the only two people who remained from a family, counting my grandfather's on my father's side only, his family, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, amounted to 64 individuals. And he and I, the only two people of their entire family, came to the United States. Everybody else was killed.
So what would you say to people today who are thinking about whether the United States should admit refugees from other countries?
I would say that they should definitely open up their borders to refugees who are running for their lives and they should be admitted to the United States, where they could live in freedom and without persecution.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you, all of you in the audience, for listening, and thank you again, Rabbi Josh, for inviting us to participate.
Thank you for listening to me.
From the bottom of our hearts, Toda Rabah to you, Dr. Chaya and Professor Anna Rubin. We now continue with Ani Ma'amin, I Believe, chanted by cantor Devorah Felder-Levy.
Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shlema, be'emunah shlema, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani ma'amin, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani ma'amin. Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shlema, be'emunah shlema, ve'af al pi she'yitmamea, im kol ze ani ma'amin, ve'af al pi she'yitmamea, im kol ze ani ma'amin. Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, be'emunah shlema, be'emunah shlema, im kol ze achake lo, b'kol yom sheyavo, im kol ze achake lo, b'kol yom sheyavo. Ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin, ani ma'amin.
In their studies about the Holocaust, 7th grade students at Yavne Day School read the book The Children of Williston Lane by Mona Golombek. We are now honored to hear a reflection written by Claire Glusman.
Darkness that swept through the children on the trains would stay there evermore. They'll never forget the faces of their parents as the trains leave. Loved ones disappear, only memories left. No one can take them.
It is now my honor to introduce Diane Fisher, the director of the Jewish Community Relations Council. She will interview Sophie Weinzimmer.
Hi, I'm Diane Fisher, Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council at the Jewish Federation of Silicon Valley. And I'm very pleased and honored to be introducing Sophie Weinzimmer, who will answer some questions and share some stories about her family's experience during the Holocaust. So welcome, Sophie.
Thank you, Diane, and it's a privilege and an honor to be invited.
So let's start by giving some context and share with us about your parents at the time of the war. Where did they live? And what did they do specifically to survive?
So my parents were both from Poland. My mother was the youngest of 9 children, and she and one of her sisters were the only survivors. My mother was not in a camp, but hid for 4 years. My father and his parents and 3 siblings were captured by the Russians, and they were moved to Siberia, where they were made uniforms for the Russian army. My parents met in Austria after the end of the war in a displaced persons subcamp of Mauthausen called Steyr, and that's where they were married, and that's where I was born, in that DP camp.
So how did your family manage to leave Europe? What was their strategy, and did their plans turn out as they originally made them?
So we were in the camp until almost my 3rd birthday because we had to wait to obtain a sponsor to come to America. Our sponsorship came from a Houston family, but it definitely didn't go as planned. On the train to Bremen, Germany, I developed a high fever and was put in quarantine for 2 weeks. We missed our ship, and then we had to wait another 2 months to be assigned to another ship. On our way to Ellis Island, there was a storm at sea, and we were rerouted to New Orleans. During that time, my parents met a family who were being sponsored by their relatives in Hollywood, California. So instead of moving to Houston, I was raised in the LA area.
Wow. Well, just for this moment, during this pandemic, I'm thinking about all the children that are stuck at home and struggling with the limitations of sheltering in place, and also the unknown resolution of this situation. And of course, this situation is clearly not directly comparable to your childhood, but as Jews, we always want to learn from our parents and learn from our collective past. So I'm wondering if you can provide some advice to all of our kids today who are weathering out these restrictions and this unknown immediate future here today.
Yes, that's an honor for me to do that. I want to speak directly to young people from my heart to your heart. This really challenging time can be your opportunity to work on becoming super resilient. The story of Passover, Yom HaShoah, and really all of Jewish history shows that we already have resilience built into our DNA. We just need to tap into it. My parents and I came to this country not knowing the language, the culture, and they had very limited job skills. They had just survived the horrors of the Holocaust, and they were now in a new survival mode, a new normal. You are now in the midst of your new normal, and this can be the biggest personal growth period in your lifetime. Pandemics, just like wars, have always been with us since the beginning of time. Just know that there is always a beginning, a middle, and an end. Resilience comes when we get more comfortable in the not knowing. If you think about it, all science, medicine, the arts, and even religion start with the unknown. We could just be observers and watch this pandemic unfold just like we're watching weather patterns. We may be in the midst of a global tornado, but it will pass just like the weather. I know that you guys are craving normalcy, fun, and you miss your friends. Thank goodness for the time you were born in. 50 years ago, there was no internet. You can still do so many things that you love. You might ask yourself, what makes me feel young and alive? Maybe dancing, music, video games. Do it every day. What makes my mind feel alive? Maybe board games, puzzles, reading, doing something creative. Do it every day. One way to look at this is that we are not self-sheltering. but we're thriving in a sheltering place, our home. Sometimes I find it helpful and I feel more control if I structure my day. You can ask yourself, how am I going to influence how my day will go? What gifts can I bring to the world today? You can lift people up by telling jokes, sharing stories, and helping out with your siblings. You can be a force for good. Compassion, humor, and patience are contagious. Be kind to your parents who are doing the very best they can at the moment. My mother, beginning at age 14, spent 4 years living in the woods, cemeteries, and in haylofts during the Holocaust. My father lived 4 years of forced labor in Siberia. They suffered a lot, but eventually came out the other end and had a beautiful life in California. It takes courage to rest in the not knowing, moment by moment and with personal awareness and calmness. Maybe try to see this as a global retreat. You can become wise teachers to future generations on how to embrace the full human experience, no matter if it includes pain and suffering. Take the time to find your own special doorway to open and come out the other side of this pandemic. Become the light in the darkness. We, your parents and your grandparents, need and celebrate you in this time of global transformation. The change can start with you.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for your sharing and for your wisdom. Very much appreciated at this time.
Most welcome.
We will now hear from Ron Levy, a student at San Jose State University and a leader at Hillel of Silicon Valley. He wrote this reflection after visiting Yad Vashem in Jerusalem.
Every year during Yom HaShoah, we think about the suffering that our ancestors went through for 12 long years, from 1933 to 1945. It's so easy to get caught in the sorrow and the tragedy that you'll never get to meet that savta, saba, or relative who may have been lost during that time. 77 years ago, there was hope towards a Zionist people and a Jewish state. Children were singing the earliest known lyrics to the Hatikva in Zionist shuls. 77 years later, we still stand proud as a chosen people and continue making efforts towards Keilah, community, Achdut and Achiot, brotherhood and sisterhood, and La'adir et HaNefesh, to glorify one's soul, to lift each other up during the hardest times, especially today in 2020. Last summer, during my time on Birthright, I was walking around Yad Vashem when I came upon an exhibit with a video looping of children singing the earliest version of the Hatikva. And I now invite you to listen to that same video, which is ingrained with the early hope of the 1930s, and soak in the powerful and proud energy of the singing of the Hatikva in a Hebrew school gymnasium in Mukachevo, Ukraine. Yalla.
We remember beloved members of our community, survivors who passed away in the previous year. Ita Blech, Joseph Emery, Judith Gash, Fabri Charuti, Aaron Kashlinsky, Timofey Kazimirov, Sophia Marmor, Fedor Menig, Roman Press, Yussi Reina, Manya Sobel, Miriam Sorger, and Henry Stone. Yehi Zichram Baruch, may their memory be a blessing. We now invite you to light a memorial candle with us to remember and honor the lives of all those who perished in the Shoah. This will be followed by El Malei Rachamim, chanted by cantor Amanda Edmondson. We will then conclude with the Mourner's Kaddish.
Adonai, Master, Creator, who set the round course of the world, birth, death, and disease.
Creator who caused veins, brains, and bones to grow, who fashioned us that we might breathe and sing.
Remember that we are incomplete, inconsolable, our vision clouded by ashes.
Remember the chimneys, the ingenious habitations of death, where part of Israel's body drifted as smoke through the air. Remember the mutilated music of their life.
We lament in fields of loneliness for 6 million of our number torn away. Remember them.
There are some who have no memorial. They perished as though they had never been. Forget them not.
Remember the landscape of screams engraved at entrance gates to death. Remember the unborn dreams.
Remember the terror of children whose tears were burned. Remember the agony of parents whose blessings were consumed.
Remember the prayers of the dying, the shame and suffering of the innocent.
Remember, we have not forgotten you, though all this has befallen us.
Remember the God-forsaken millions in a silent world. Their loneliness was matched only by yours.
Who is like you, Adonai, among the silent, remaining silent through the suffering of your children.
Are you not God, Adonai, that we may hope in you? Renew the light of your creation, which has been dimmed.
Remember the hopes of the slain by sending redemption to your shattered world.
In spite of everything which strangles hope,
help us to continue the sustaining song of their lives.
El male rachamim shochen bamromim hamitzeh menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina b'malot kiroshim u'torim כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמות 6 מיליון אחינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו על קידוש השם בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם Adonai u'nachalatam v'yanuchu b'shalom al mishkavam v'nomar Fully compassionate God on high, to our 6 million brothers and sisters murdered because they were Jews, grant clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the embrace of your wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, they are yours. They will rest in peace. Amen.
Yikadal Auschwitz, Yikadash Lodz, Shmei Rabbah Ponar, Ba'alma Dibra Kirute, Babiyar, Yamlich Malchute, Medanek, B'chaychon U'yomechon, Birkenau, U'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Kovno, Ba'agala U'zman Kariv, Inaska, Yimru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Barach Le'olam B'lamei Almaya, Yitbarach V'yishabach, Teres Zashtat, V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam, B'ulukavald, V'yitnaseh V'yitadar, Treblinka, V'yitaleh V'yitalal, Vilna, Shnei Nehushah, Bergen-Belsen, Richu Elela, Mount Tausen, Min kol yerchata v'shirata Dachau, Tushbachata v'nechamata Minsk, Da'amiran v'alma Warsaw, v'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Neshama, v'chayim aleinu al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mirmav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, Amen.
Thank you for joining us this evening for this important act of memory. We give special thanks to Professor Anna Rubin and Sophie Weinzimmer for sharing their testimony. I'm so grateful to all of my friends and colleagues from across the community for partnering in tonight's service. We look forward to a time soon when we can be safely together in person. Until then, we pray for health and blessings for you, your loved ones, and all those with whom we share this beautiful world. Laila Tov. Good night.